Thank you. Our first item of business, roll call, is going around, I believe. We have 25 members present and therefore a quorum. First item of action is consideration of last month's meeting's minutes. Is there? Opposed? We have today, so that'll take us right into public comment. So I see there's a number of members of the public here tonight. I just want to remind everybody that the purpose of public comment is to provide It's not intended to provide for interactive debate or for the cross-examination of citizens or members of the county board. Once you are recognized, you may speak uninterrupted except for procedural matters for up to 5 minutes. Make sure that your comments are directed at the board as a whole and not to any individual members. And with that, we'll take public comment. Are there any members of the public looking to speak?
Good evening and thank you for the opportunity. My name is Catherine Dahlke and I reside at 3727 Adams Street in Two Rivers, Wisconsin. I stand before the board would like to make some comments with regard to the proposed spending of, is it $30 million to repair the dome in the county building in Manitowoc. Sorry, a little nerve-wracking to be the first one up here. I see that the repairs are necessary. I understand the appropriate due diligence has been done. I'm asking the board to consider a few things. Number one, to put this on a referendum so citizens across the county have an opportunity to weigh in and place their vote on how they will be taxed moving forward. I mentioned I lived at 3727 Adams Street in Two Rivers. I am a homeowner. I've been a homeowner for several years in Two Rivers. My property tax is running close to $9,000 right now. I will be impacted by increases. It is a generational home. This is a generational tax that spans a number of years. Are we good, Don? Thank you, Mr. Zimmer. I also know that there was consideration for a 0.5% sales tax increase. I understand that there is a concern about putting a burden on a certain population within the county. If we're to spend this money, we all use the county courthouse. How do we amortize? How do we spread this out across folks across the board? Not everybody in the county is a homeowner. Many of the homes in the county have now been converted to Airbnbs and are rental properties. That means we have folks coming in and out of these areas, spending money, and a sales tax could certainly help defray the cost for those homeowners moving forward. If there's an option out there to do a potential short-term sales tax increase to bring down the potential burden to the homeowners, I think that's something that we as taxpayers and homeowners would like to see considered. And I'm asking you to ensure that if we're looking to put a burden out there, that the burden is shared equitably across the board. Thank you for your time and consideration.
For your comments, are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? Yes, Forrest? If you could just state your name for the record, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, Chairman, for giving me the opportunity to share my ideas and my concerns for the courthouse. Thank you. So my name is Horst Abel. My residence is 1103 Lincoln Boulevard, Manitowoc, Wisconsin. And I grew up as a Judeo-Christian with Judeo-Christian values, and which is the bedrock of our society, or I can say it should be so. And I still cherish these values. And I think there is a conflict here. When it comes to spending money, these three values are very outstanding. First, don't buy what you can't afford. Second, in all situations, look for delays gratification. I always have to ask myself, is this a want or a need? Can I fix it and be still within the budget? And the third point is judge the urgency before making plans for a repair or a purchase. If there is not enough money for a repair, then an emergency loan would be necessary. And we are going on this back and forth if we have a loan or not a loan and how we come up with the funds. This would give time for a few years to guarantee funds to have a more substantial repair done. I realize the urgency for a repair, but we are in the middle of a recession, and that has an impact on the extent of the repair. So I see there maybe a few ways that we can cut this repair down and bring the costs down. In past years, this board has shown fiscal restraint, and I hope it will remain that way. I propose to go ahead and repair what needs to be done to avoid future structural damage. In 5 years, have a second look how this beautiful courthouse can be kept in use, and then go to the next step. In tough times, we have to buckle down and step carefully into the future. It is not right to borrow and leave the burden to pay for our children's children. As a side note, my house was built in 1926. The roof is still the same, and it doesn't leak. The wooden windows have been varnished and painted over many years, and this is still good for another 20 years. I expect the same maintenance in every government building. And now I give you thank you very much for taking my ideas into consideration.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public who'd wish to speak? Forrest?
My name is Forrest Lefebvre. I live at 4932 Highway 147 West, Maribel, Wisconsin. And I just have something real brief to share in regards to the $30 million wanting to borrow for repairing the dome for the courthouse. I'm all for history. I'm all for repairs. But I'm also for fairness. And if we're looking at taxing homeowners, I am a multi-home owner in Manitowoc County, which means I would be getting taxed more than the average homeowner who per se owns one home. I don't make a lot of money, but the one other thing that I would like to point out, on recommendation, I'm putting this onto a referendum for spring election for the people to put their input in. When you're making decisions on money that's not yours, this is our future. These children here are our futures. All my money I do, all my money I make, everything I do is for my children. Everything that I would do on a board would be looking generations ahead. So I would back up Catherine Delkey's word on finding another source to get the money too. I'm willing to put money, but I don't want to be the sole provider as a homeowner to be putting out the bill. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? Yes, Judith.
Judith Perlman, 1241 Lakeshore Drive in Cleveland. First of all, I'm just kind of nervous to be up here. First of all, I think we all want the same thing. We all want what's best for the county, even if we may disagree on the path to get there. I understand that the courts and services need a safe place to function while we sort this out, and I fully support moving ahead to fix the HVAC and windows as soon as possible. I understand that that's approximately 30% of the full cost. But before spending the totality of the sum, I think the board has a fiduciary duty to do everything you can to investigate alternatives and ways to ameliorate the cost. The long-term debt would be a burden to many residents of the county now and in the future, and could limit the county's ability to do other important things going forward. So I have 3 suggestions for you to consider on ways that might lessen the debt. Number 1, as of 2012, there are 221 National Historic Landmark designated county courthouses in Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, and Iowa. I think it might be good for the board, and I understand you don't do any of this on your own. It would be to designate somehow in county services, I don't know exactly how that works, that you all have your own jobs and retirements, and it's not your function to do things like this. But if I were on the board, I would want to know what these 221 counties themselves, how they're handling their courthouses. I think there's a wealth of information out there that could be useful to us in terms of what's going on. How are they being maintained? Where's the money coming from? How are they doing the maintenance? How strict to historical standards are they being done? How are the buildings being used? Are they being reused? Whatever. I just think there's a lot of information there that could be very useful before we decide to spend the full $30 million. My second idea is that I know that the Department of Public Works, Gary, I don't know if Gary's here today or not, he's great, the department's great, I've had nothing but great experience with him, was tasked with looking for other sources of money and found that they were limited, but I think the county taxpayer is owed a more thorough look at funds. And I think there are a couple of ways that could be done. From my own experience when I was working, I know that sometimes the architecture engineering firms, as part of their bid, can look at funds. And if you bid this out to more than one firm, that can be part of the bid. Or perhaps the county themselves could hire someone full-time to come in as a grant writer. They're typically paid as a percentage of the money they bring in, so the net cost to the county wouldn't be that high. And as a taxpayer, I would feel a lot better if the county did that. If somebody looked for a full year and said there isn't money out there, I'd be more comfortable with this expenditure than not looking at all. Finally, the resolution states that the courthouse is the, quote, civic image and, quote, central to the fiber of the county. I don't know if that's true or not. The people I have talked to don't seem to feel that way, but maybe they're not representative. But assuming you are correct, let's go on that. When I go to the library, the atrium wall is filled with the names of foundations, businesses, and individuals who contributed to the building of a new library. If in fact this courthouse is that important to our fiber, I think somehow—
You have about 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. We should see a capital campaign. People can be urged in the community to do this, or a professional grant writer can run it. It's a huge fiscal constraint. I agree with the person who spoke that citizens are accustomed to voting on big capital initiatives, with school board initiatives and the like. I would be happy to talk to any of you personally about these ideas or other ideas, but I think there are many alternatives to research and consider before burdening the taxpayers with decades of debt. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? Yes, sir. We'll go in the back.
Thank you. Steve Erdman, 1824 Abbey Ridge Lane in the city of Manitowoc. And first of all, this is a difficult project. There's no doubt about it. A couple of my fears are, I really would hate to see the sales tax. I spent time down in Texas living down there, and once the tax is implemented, it's harder than heck to get rid of it. So I would definitely stay away from it. Is this the right time to do it? Boy, with the economy the way it could fall off at the burst of a bubble, I don't know. But I know things are tough, right? I don't think the people of Manitowoc County really understand this plan. I got most of my information from social media. And I'm fear that if this is implemented, they'll understand it when they get their tax bill. And that's the wrong time to let them know. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? Yes, sir, in the blue. You raised your hand.
Hi, Steve Spearing, 4918 County Road B, Town of Kasuth. I just really believe that this is the wrong time to be doing this. I mean, if you look at all that, we've really done well. The whole county board has kept the taxes low, but you can't tell me that there's a administrative need for the courthouse. This is a historical thing. And I'm all for it. I would hate to see the courthouse gone. I mean, it's a beautiful building and it does represent our county. But now when they had the glass dome on it originally and the hailstorm took it out, when they repaired that, why didn't they put a glass dome on there again? Instead, they put stainless steel on there, and then they put a roof underneath it so that if the dome did fail, it wouldn't ruin the building itself. Can't we do something like that? Some way to get the costs down? It's still a beautiful building. Polish the dome. All that stainless steel, that would look really cool. But if nothing else, I don't know why this room isn't packed. It should be, because everybody I talk to says this is crazy to spend this amount of money now. Bring it to a referendum. That's all I have.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anybody else looking to speak tonight? Yes, Chip?
Good evening, Chip Yost, Centerville. Two quick PSAs tonight. First, a reminder that the county board sessions are available on YouTube. Secondly, the new 2023 Rustic Roads Guide is now available in print and online and offers 124 back road trips. Rustic roads range from 2 miles to 37 miles in length and have a maximum speed limit of 45 miles per hour. I'll begin by reviewing the major decisions for the county board on the dome and restoration project as published on the county's website. Number one, decide whether or not to go ahead with a project that includes the courthouse dome repair and restoration, courthouse window replacements, and HVAC replacement. No deadline was designated. Number three, decide whether to go out for bids on the 3 phases of work: dome restoration, windows, and HVAC, end of year 1. Number 4, decide on the funding mechanism, end of year 1. Number 5, accept or reject bids on the individual projects, beginning of year 2. Tonight's resolution includes the phrase "at a cost not to exceed $30 million. That is the principal amount, and with interest and fees, the amount our 36,000 plus county taxpayers will pay over the 20 to 25 years is approximately $45 million. County Executive Ziegelbauer states in the fact that, quote, repairs and renovations need to happen in the near term. We are not in a dire situation to start the project. Yet, as we see from the major decision points, deciding to go out for bids and the funding mechanism aren't due until the end of the year 1. So why the rush in this midsummer? There was considerable uncertainty in the ad hoc committee. In June, a motion failed to finance the project using the borrowing option. In July, a joint resolution by the Public Works and Finance passed with an amendment to fund the project through long-term borrowing. Within a month, note that that's a total change, eliminating the possibility of implementing a, quote, half-cent on a dollar spent sales tax that would raise $7 to $9 million annually. In a deal struck between Governor Evers and the state legislature, Act 12 also provides additional aid to counties and municipalities in fiscal year 2025-2026 and beyond by linking both current and supplemental county and municipal aid to the growth rate in the state sales tax. A review of the tourism impacts along the I-43 corridor shows that the average percent change from 2021 to 2023 among the counties with a sales tax is 11.67%, while Manitowoc counties is 48% less. I suggest you first decide how to fund the project and then whether or not to proceed with it incrementally. And so, as I've said so many times before, I continue to advocate for a half-cent on a dollar spent countywide sales tax, quote, as the borrower is slave to the lender, Proverbs 22:17. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? Yes, in the yellow.
Good evening. My name is Peter Lindeman. I'm here to speak in favor of the rezone of Peter and Jean Lindeman's revocable trust. My sister and I would like to take 3 acres of non-tillable land on a 40-acre parcel and build self-storage units for the public's use. This would give us an opportunity to learn how to plan and develop an otherwise unused property while building equity for ourselves and our future families. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? Anybody else who wishes to speak? And for a third and final time, is there anybody who wishes to make public comment? Seeing none, I will close public comment and we will get on with the rest of our agenda. There are no appointments by the county executive, so that'll take us to committee reports, and we'll start with Planning and Park Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Planning and Park Commission met on June 26th. We had on our docket that day 3 rezone requests, 3 variance requests, and to consider 6 ordinance violations for corporate counsel for enforcement. They consisted of 2 sanitary issues and 4 Chapter 6.18 code issues. After the committee conducted their normal procedural actions and had an opportunity for public comment, out of the 3 hearings for the zone request, 2 of them were postponed for our next meeting, and to provide an abundance of clarity before determining our findings. They were the Andres Revocable Trust from town of Kossuth, Reverse from the town of Gibson. The commission heard testimony from 2 adjacent property owners, Rank and Page, for their expressed concerns in opposition for the Gibson rezone. Without a principal party or local planning official present, the commission voted to postpone these rezone requests. However, for your consideration tonight is the rezone request for Peter and Jean Linderman Revocable Trust from the town of Liberty. The rezone request is from exclusive ag to rural residential. We heard the Director Ryan's commentary related to the rezone request criteria. Also, a letter from the town of Liberty supporting the request was placed into the record. After discussion, a motion to approve the rezone request passed unanimously. Therefore, on behalf of the commission, I so move to approve ordinance 2022-2023-15, amending the zoning map for Peter J. Linderman and Jean M. Linderman Revocable Trust.
There's a motion to adopt the ordinance. Is there a second? Supervisor Phipps. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, the clerk will conduct the vote. And the ordinance is adopted. Congratulations.
Next, we reviewed their certified surveys and development plans and subdivisions. We approved the unanimous vote for variance requests for Michael Stren from town of Rockland, Aaron and Naomi Abler-Schultz from the town of Sedgwick, and Wayne Miller et al. From the town of Sedgwick. Mr. Schultz testified and answered questions for the commission as well as Mr. Miller about their request. Next, the commission discussed and heard testimony for possibly referring ordinance violations to corporate counsel. Ms. Bulkman provided commentary regarding Thielen and Sheenahan violations and reviewed correspondence from one of the parties which was represented by counsel. The commission deliberated and voted to refer these items onto corporate counsel. Next, Mr. Gatke provided commentary regarding Chapter 6.18 violations and investigation for Fishner, Rinker, Peral, and Fager. We heard testimony and addressed questions to any of the parties appearing at the proceedings. After the deliberation and consideration of the provided testimony, the commission determined the latitude for compliance would be best addressed through the corporate counsel for the best outcome. A motion passed unanimously to pass these items on to the corporate counsel. Our last item on the agenda was an update from the surveyor's seminar from Mr. Jason Bolts, who was in attendance at the seminar. He gave us an overview and answered questions about the changes that are occurring in surveying. Lastly, we were given a draft of the park and open space plan update to be reviewed at our next meeting. No other items to report. Our next meeting date is scheduled for Monday, July 24th. The advisory is at 3:30. Our hearings are at 4. Check your meeting notices in your email. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That is the end of my report.
Thank you, Supervisor Falkowski. Next is the Aging and Disability Board. Supervisor Wagner.
Thank you, Chairman Martell. The ADRC has a meeting next week, Tuesday, July 25th, and it will be held in Kewaunee County, and it will start at 10 a.m. That's the end of my report.
Thank you. Supervisor Metzger, Board of Health.
I have no report, but I have two resolutions. The first one is a resolution accepting 2023 Public Health Infrastructure Grant, and I so move.
There's a motion, second by Supervisor Mink. Any discussion on the motion? Supervisor Shimalunas.
Yeah, I was just wondering, $259,000 for recruitment, hiring, training. It sounds like most of this is meant for salaries and so on. So what are you gonna do next year when this is used up? Because I'm sure this is gonna be used up in a year. If you hire new people, how are you expecting to retain them? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, in the resolution that it's meant for recruitment, hiring, training, and retention of the HD staff. Well, that's what I read.
Used for? For the following year, you mean? Well, we could probably still use it in the future too, whatever is left. It's money from the federal government going to the state. Why is mine so loud?
Supervisor Metzger, I think the question is if this is one-time grant funding or if we expect this to continue. And Supervisor Shimalunas, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the question is if this is one-time grant funding, how will we continue to provide salaries for the people that are hired using this grant money? Is that correct, Supervisor Shimalunas?
Well, usually we get money every year from the federal to the state. So, I mean, but a lot of it is more for training and that kind of purposes, you know, like for the flu clinics and for the people that are there now to learn, you know, what's best for the community. Does that help? Okay.
Thank you, Supervisor Shimalunas and Supervisor Metzger. Is there any other discussion on the motion? If not, the clerk will conduct the vote. A yes vote would be to accept the grant funds, and no vote would be to reject the grant funds.
Supervisors will now vote on the resolution accepting the 2023 Public Health Infrastructure Grant.
And the resolution is passed unanimously. Supervisor Metzger?
The second resolution is accepting the 2023 Public Health Vending Machine Grant, and that is a vending machine that we got $25,000 for, and we're gonna be using it for the Narcan, for the drugs, and they had talked about putting at Econo Lodge, and then we have to pay like a rental fee and stuff for that. So I so move.
There's a motion to pass the resolution. Is there a second? Supervisor Niles? Any discussion? Supervisor Benke?
Yeah, is there anything else besides the Narcan going in this vending machine?
The one that they had talked at the meeting about, correct? Yeah. Thank you.
Supervisor Benke, you still have the floor? Okay, Supervisor Nadel?
Supervisor Benke kind of answered one of my questions here, but one other one I had was, did we ever talk about it being monitored? Is there going to be a camera around it, or do we?
Yet, but I'm sure that we will have it monitored.
Supervisor Nadel? Is that the end of your question?
That is it, thank you.
All right, thank you. Supervisor Phipps?
Thank you, Chairman Martell. Couple quick questions. I did a little bit of research on these, and some have crack pipes in the machine itself, and then some that you don't have any consequences for using the machine, like as far as like a teenager or, you know, like even a toddler, like anybody can use these machines with no consequences at all. Is that correct?
Sorry, Supervisor Metzger, your microphone.
Yes.
Okay, thank
It's, you know, like if somebody overdoses, it's to save their life.
Thank you. Supervisor Phipps, you still have the floor. And if we could just take just a moment to pause while I switch the microphones on so we can catch the beginning of everybody's comments, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Just some of my concerns with my research was that some people were using the vending machines inappropriately, and there was more options than just a Narcan in the vending machines. If we give our approval on this, does that limit it to just Narcan? Or is there other things that can be put in this vending machine at any time?
Would you like to answer that, Supervisor Metzger?
I don't know if Bob knows anything about this?
All right.
Only Narcan, he said.
Thank you. Supervisor Phipps, you still have the floor.
Another thing that I researched was that they often put the vending machines in a place that they're less likely to be abused. Did you do any of that research at all, like such as at the sheriff's department or somewhere where it potentially may not be abused at all?
The director is the one that told us it would go possibly at Econo Lodge. That's well-known, it's right in the, visible so people can see and people can get to it with easy access.
I guess my biggest concern with this resolution is that potentially our younger population could be harmed by whatever's in that vending machine. Because if there's no accountability, let's say I just was a young kid and I wanted to get all the Narcan out of there, I could do that, correct?
Sure how it's ran. The director of the health department should really be here to answer that for you. We didn't get any of that unless if any other supervisor on the Board of Health, they don't know either.
Just like to make a comment that supervisors are limited to speaking twice on a topic. So if you have a number of questions, I would encourage you to make your statement and ask them all at once. That way we're avoiding this back and forth. Thank you. Phipps, I'll give you the floor one last time on this topic.
Sure, thank you, Chairman Martell. I would like a motion to delay this resolution. I'd like to make a motion to delay the resolution to research it a little bit further.
When you're motioning to delay, are you asking to bring it up at the county board at a specific date, or would you like to see it referred back to the Board of Health?
I would like it to see referred back to the Board of Health to do a little bit more research on it.
Okay, there's a motion to refer this resolution back to the Board of Health. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Zimmer. Discussion on the motion to refer back to the Board of Health. Supervisor Falkowski, I have you next. Did you want to speak to that motion?
I don't know where the motion goes or how it proceeds. But I don't know, this might actually be some beneficial. I did talk to Corinne, I think, the director for the health department, to get some briefing because I was trying to look at the terms of the grant. The grant application has specific terms of what you can use that vending machine for. And I believe that it was very limited to either fentanyl test strips and to Narcan, that's it. So none of the other things, according to obligating to the grant proposal, you could do anything else with that. So only those two items are basically in that apparatus. The choice of location had to meet some criteria, and in order for them to apply the grant, they had to have a location in mind to even apply for the grant. That's why they ended up with the grant. I don't know this, I wouldn't rock solidly say this because I can't speak for her benefit, but the way I understood it is that they can review, because if in fact that location is problematic, which is valid. I mean, I've heard concerns about having that location as being problematic for trying to mitigate people coming off of addiction. Like in some communities, they'll have them at fire departments or at hospitals and stuff. The Econo Lodge caught a lot of people by an attention standpoint. But the fact that I think under the terms of the grant, they can review that, and then some application, if it's not working out, they can pull it and put it to a different location. So all those things are worked out in terms of the grant. I would appreciate it, and from the standpoint of speaking to the motion a little bit, if we had more time to look at the results or the output of that grant application, I think everybody would better understand exactly what this, what the terms of these conditions would be for this vending machine applied in our county. So to some extent, I don't have any objection that it be delayed and put back into the health departments for review. On the same token, for anybody that's concerned about, this is gonna be a mechanism for putting crack pipes in it or other, or other items and stuff, I think the terms of the grant is pretty limited to allowing that. So unless, that would be it's not within the discretion of the health department's director to put something else in it. So from that standpoint, I don't think I'm in any grounds, but you could feel assured that if you went forward with this, it would work. And if you wanted to kick this back to the health department and actually read the terms of the grant, I think that would be fine too. So I'm ambivalent about it.
Thank you, Supervisor Valkowski. Supervisor Zimmer, you seconded the motion. Would you like to speak on that?
Gosh, this thing is really, this sounds like a ill-considered federal government project, like, handing out crack pipes to addicts out in San Francisco. Whole thing stinks. At the very least, there ought to be more information available from the experts, the people who are health specialists, before we go approving this.
Thank you, Supervisor Zimmer. Supervisor Giroux.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Was there not a motion and a second to accept this grant? And are you considering an amendment now, or are we?
It's a motion to refer it back to committee. That does take precedence. So that's the motion that's now on the floor.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Supervisor Giroux?
No.
Thank you. Supervisor Bry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to the amendments, I mean, it's very interesting. Trust me, being an alderman in the city of Manitowoc, we know there's problems at the Econo Lodge. This vending machine is going to be for fentanyl strips and for the Narcan. And it's interesting because last month at our Human Services Board meeting, we had a presentation by 2 nurses in the department regarding Narcan. It was very interesting. And one thing I guess I learned from it, that with the exception of helping a person who has overdosed on some kind of drug or a fentanyl or something, Narcan is basically useless to anything else. Not that you would want to go in and buy Narcan to just use to chew or to eat or to supplement your diet, but I don't know what the big deal about this thing is. This is a lifesaver. This is potentially a lifesaver. And trust me, there's gonna be enough people going through that place. If somehow I managed a crack pipe or something, I guess semi-legal or illegal got put in that vending machine, it would be reported right away to the health department, or at least to the county executive or the chairman. Somebody would find out about it very quickly. Referring this back to the committee isn't gonna change anything. They're gonna come back with the same recommendation. So I urge you not to send it back. If you don't support the resolution, understandable, but there's no need to send it back to the Board of Health. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Bry. Supervisor Metzger.
The county exec told me he is going to direct the director to what goes in it, and he said there will not be no crack pipes in it, that he will take care of all that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bob, would you like to speak on this at all, or is that summarize your comments? Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion to refer back to the Board of Health? Seeing none, the clerk, Supervisor Klein.
So if I can get some Narcan, and I'm with my buddies, and I'm trying to push the limit, so I'm gonna purposely see what the high's like to take me over the edge and have one of my buddies administer it to me after. I think there's a lot of unintended consequences that'll come from making this available just to the mere public. So it's a consideration that I think we need to consider. and vote accordingly.
Thank you Supervisor Klein. Supervisor Falkowski.
Just a little FYI, there are 9 available outlets where you can get Narcan over the counter without a prescription. Walk into Pick and Save, Walgreens, Walmart, Pathways, Manitowoc County Human Services, et cetera. So there are a number of sources out there that in Kiel that you can actually walk in there and say, I'd like some Narcan. The benefit for doing it is I think Jim or Supervisor Bry pointed out, if you try to take it, it's not going to do anything for you. It is specifically targeted for someone that's having an opioid overdose. So I think it's good to go with this resolution personally.
Thank you Supervisor Falkowski. Any other discussion on the motion to refer back to Board of Health? Seeing none, the clerk will conduct the vote.
Supervisors will vote on the motion to refer this resolution back to the Board of Health.
All right, the motion fails with 7 voting in the affirmative, 18 voting against. So now we are back to the original motion, which is to accept the grant funds. Would anyone speak on the motion to accept, to adopt the resolution? Seeing none, the clerk, Supervisor Falkowski.
The only request, and I don't know if I should get that from Corinne, I'd like to see the grant application. I would really like to see the details of it. So at some, I'll support the resolution, but I would really like to dive down into what the details are of this. Thank you.
Thank you Supervisor Falkowski. Any other discussion on the motion to adopt the resolution? Seeing none, Supervisor Phipps. Yeah, he did speak twice. Supervisor Phipps, could you just make your comments very brief?
Do we have any liability if any minors take the Narcan or are hurt by them, or hurt by it?
Would that be a question?
Or anything in the vending machine?
Sure. Would that be a question for you, Peter?
Yeah. I think it would be highly unlikely that we would have any liability in those terms.
Any other discussion on the motion? Supervisor Bry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to reiterate once again what was talked about at the Human Services Board meeting when we had the discussion about the training on Narcan, that Narcan, with the exception of treating opioids, as Supervisor Falkowski mentioned, is harmless. It will not do anything to anybody. So I guess I tend to agree with our Corp Counsel that there would be no liability here. If anything, I guess I would hope that if a minor did see something that needed to be done like that, they would do the right thing and purchase it or get the thing and administer it so it would actually work. So, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Bry. Any other discussion on the motion to adopt the resolution? Supervisor Mink.
I'll be really quick. Oh, darn it. Basically, I've been saying this for a number of years. Our biggest public health and public safety problem is hard drug use. I did talk to the sheriff about this. He had some reservations about it. But at the same time, unless addiction magically goes away tomorrow, we're still going to have this problem. People are still going to deal the drugs. People are going to use them. This will provide, Narcan is available not just in 9 different places. A lot of people carry it. I've had friends in and out of recovery for years now. And at the same time, even a small town in Marshall like my father carries Narcan. It's just there. That's how prevalent the problem is. So hence I urge moving forward with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Mink. Any other discussion on the motion to adopt the resolution? Seeing none, the clerk will conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the resolution accepting 2023 Public Health Vending Machine Grant.
All right, the resolution is adopted, 20 voting in the affirmative, 5 voting against. Okay. All right, anything else, Supervisor Metzger?
No, that's the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, Supervisor Falkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no report for this month. The next council meeting is September 6th. Thank you.
Thank you. I have nothing to report for the Executive Committee, Expo Ice Center Board, Supervisor Sikowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Expo Ice Center Board met on Wednesday, July 5th. The board reviewed the Expo's 6-year capital outlay plan and recommended approval of it to the Public Works Committee. The annual County Fair Billboard Contest between the county's 4-H groups has started, and several Expo board members will be traveling across the county on July 20th to judge the billboards. The Expo board is working on the county fair volunteer schedule, and if any county board supervisors are interested in volunteering at the fair, please call the Expo office at 920-683-4378. In a new opportunity to market our county fair, the Expo board is participating in the Rock Your Putter event on August 13th. What that involves is that we've been getting tagged on the radio as being one of the sponsors for it. So it just puts it out there that the fair is a sponsor of it. The fairest of the fair, Emma Dvorak, participated at the Breakfast on the Farm on June 11th to highlight the county fair. This season's capital projects are in full swing with a lot of activity happening on the grounds. The new music pavilion building project is almost completed and is looking great. The Horse Barn Road was completely rebuilt by the County Highway Department, and new roofs were installed on several storage buildings. Everyone is invited to see the new music pavilion and other improvements during the Fair Week, August 23rd to the 27th. And the next Expo Ice Center Board meeting is scheduled for August 2nd at the Expo office. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you. Supervisor Droll?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to publicly wish Supervisor Sitkowitz a happy birthday.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, Supervisor Sikowitz. Finance Committee, Supervisor Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have one resolution tonight. This has nothing to do with the courthouse. This is a finance resolution coming through. The county was being audited at the time we were going out for the bonds for highway work being done this year. The work started, weather got nice, the work started. We used some of our funding to pay some bills, and this resolution just makes sure that we get that money back from the bonds that we will need for that project. So I move to approve resolution, believe it's number 4.
There is a motion to approve the resolution, second by Supervisor Bry. Any discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, the clerk will conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the resolution declaring official intent to reimburse expenditures from proceeds of borrowing.
And the resolution is adopted. Anything else, Supervisor Hanson?
Monday of the month at 4:30. And if you have questions or want to join us, you are always welcome.
Thank you. Highway Supervisor Benke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did not meet in July. We will meet in August. August 8th will be our next meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Human Services Board, Supervisor Bry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no report, but just it's that time of season again. The next scheduled meeting of the Human Services Board will actually be for the public hearing for the 2024 budget. It'll be Thursday, August 24th at 4 p.m. in the boardroom off of and use the J Street exit. J Street entrance. You want to go in first before you have to exit. But anyways, the regular board meeting will be following that public hearing. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Bry. Supervisor Wagner with Land Conservation Committee and the UW Extension and Agriculture Committee.
Thank you, Chairman Martell. The Land Conservation meeting this Thursday, the 20th of July, at 4:45 and at the County Office Complex. The UW Extension, Education, and Agriculture Committee will be next month, August 17th, at the County Office Complex and also at 4:45. That's the end of my report.
Thank you, Supervisor Wagner. Personnel Committee, Supervisor Marsh.
Thank you. All I have is the resolution establishing compensation for county board supervisors for a term beginning April 2024. We've talked about this for the last couple meetings, and we have decided to stay at where we are with the salary. So I so move.
Thank you, Supervisor Marsh. There's a motion and a second by Supervisor Heller. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, the clerk will conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the resolution establishing compensation for county board supervisors for term beginning April 2024.
And the resolution is adopted unanimously. Supervisor Marsh, you still have the floor.
Our next meeting is August 1st at 4:30. Everyone is welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Marsh. Next, we have Public Safety Supervisor Falkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no report for this month for public safety, but we will meet on August 9th, starting at the C&T building at 5 p.m. Also, invitation to any supervisors who wants to join us visiting the Clerk of Court's office and also the new 4th branch for the Circuit Court. Any questions, give me an email. Thank you. That's my end of my report.
Thank you, Supervisor Falkowski. Public Works Committee, Supervisor Droll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Public Works met before the joint Public Works Finance Committee meeting and reviewed and approved 3 pay requests for Schaus Mechanical, Valley Building Services, and Hammond Construction. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Transportation Coordinating Council, Supervisor Hacker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next meeting of the Transportation Coordinating Committee is July 26th, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. Then we have 2 miscellaneous items. Supervisor Droll, Supervisor Hanson, which one of you will be introducing the resolution? Supervisor Droll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Monday, July 10th, Public Works and Finance met, and as you all know, we are a group of committees as well as the Committee of the Whole. We all agreed to form an ad hoc committee to discuss the Dome project, and from there it went to Public Works and was reported out to Public Works and Finance, and from there it was reported out to all of us, and I introduced Resolution 2023-2024-20 with expressing an intent to proceed to the Courthouse Dome project. I so move.
There's a motion to adopt the resolution, second by Supervisor Hanson. Any discussion on the motion? Okay. I just want to make my comments first. That way I can step back and let you guys discuss. So I have some prepared comments, so if you'll just indulge me for a moment. So when this project was first proposed, I knew that as chair, you all elected me and entrusted me to lead the process that was worthy of this board and worthy of the citizens of Manitowoc County. So I just want to take a moment to discuss the efforts that we've made to make this the most open, fair, educational, and transparent process possible. The project was proposed in August of 2022, nearly a year ago. Shortly after, County Executive Ziegelbauer and I spent hours at last year's county fair discussing the project with hundreds of fairgoers. Thanks to the suggestion of Supervisor Phipps, in October I organized a tour of the courthouse dome that many of you attended. In December, I proposed the creation of the ad hoc committee to discuss the courthouse dome project, and after listening to feedback from the public, we included citizen members on the committee who brought their experience in construction, project management, planning, and historic preservation. When I proposed this committee, I had 3 goals in mind. First, I wanted the entire county board to be educated on the project, and I wanted to involve as many county supervisors as possible in the process. Second, I believe firmly in transparency, and I wanted to make sure that the community had the opportunity to be involved as well. I wanted the public to have ample opportunity to learn about the project, to attend meetings, and let their county supervisors know how they should vote. And third, I hoped that the committee would explore alternatives to the project. I believe that through the committee, we were able to accomplish most of what we set out to do, and I'm very proud of that. I want to thank the ad hoc committee members who took on the additional responsibility and met monthly since the beginning of the year. I also want to thank Public Works Department staff for providing the committee with materials, for providing IT, for being IT services, that way members could attend virtually, and so that meetings could be recorded, and for being ready and available at meetings to answer questions. I especially want to recognize our Public Works Director, Jerry Neuser. Jerry answered every question I had thoroughly and promptly, and I'm sure he answered all of yours too. He was available evenings and even on weekends for tours and phone calls. Because of Jerry going above and beyond, this board had a deliberative process that was informed, open, and transparent. You rarely get to see that in government, and so we owe him our thanks. Where the ad hoc committee fell short, in my opinion, was exploring alternatives, which I know is something that a number of supervisors were hoping for. Installing a superficial replica of the dome to be placed on top of the courthouse or a more robust maintenance plan are two alternatives that I wish would have received more earnest discussion and exploration. As chair of the Courthouse Dome Advisory Committee, I take responsibility for not making more space for those discussions to happen. I went into this process with an open mind. Probably to the frustration of some, I did not make a snap decision about the project when the county board first began discussing it in August. It took me many meetings and conversations with you and with my constituents to reach the conclusions that I've come to today, and so here are some of my takeaways. In my view, the restoration consists of 4 individual and separate projects: an HVAC nearing the end of its life that we are estimating will cost nearly $2 million to replace, windows that will cost between $1.5 and $2 million to replace, the interior rotunda dome, which will cost $2 to $2.5 million to restore, and the exterior tower and dome, which will make up the lion's share of the project, bringing the estimated total to $30 million. On the HVAC system, while it is working now, it is near its expected end of life. It's an old system that's costly and difficult to repair. If it were to break down unexpectedly, it would be disruptive to courthouse business. Because of this, I believe that it would be wise to replace the system sooner rather than later, and it should be our first priority. On the windows, most of the windows are nearly 50 years old. Some are in better conditions than others, but many will need to be replaced in the near future. I believe that as a matter of maintenance to the building, we should plan to replace all of the windows within the next couple of years. On the interior rotunda and dome, at this time, I've not been convinced that this is an immediate necessity. Some of the plaster that's visible from the inside is wearing, but the structural integrity is fine. That's according to the architect. While it would be really impressive to upgrade and restore the rotunda to allow for light to come through, in my view, this is a want rather than a need, and the interior rotunda dome should not be a part of this restoration project at this time. That brings us to the exterior tower and dome, which is the area of the project that I've struggled with the most. On one hand, we have to recognize that the courthouse dome serves no practical purpose. No government business is conducted within. It is decorative, not functional. As someone who takes his charge to represent taxpayers seriously, it's hard to wrap my head around spending tens of millions of dollars on something seemingly so frivolous. But on the other hand, our courthouse is a symbol of strength and justice. Its architecture is a historical nod to the ancient Greeks who invented the world's first democracy, and the ancient Romans who attempted to craft a republic. Like the Capitol buildings in Washington and Madison, our courthouse dome, reaching into the sky, reminds us of our community of the incredible things we can do and accomplish when we work together. Our Manitowoc County forefathers had a functioning courthouse in 1906, but they had the audacity to construct not just an office building, but an edifice that would embody who we are, who we have been, and who we yet hope to be. As a history teacher, I believe that we have a moral obligation to remember, revere, and preserve our past for future generations. But this board cannot claim that we are preserving this building for future generations when the proposal before us tonight passes responsibility for payment to future generations. As an elected representative, I said I take my responsibility to Manitowoc County taxpayers very seriously, and I know all of you do too. People, especially those in government, sometimes forget that there's no such thing as government money. Every dime the government spends was taken from a person who worked hard to earn it. I think about that every time I vote to spend money and to make sure that we are spending tax dollars wisely. I do not think borrowing for this project at this time is a wise use of taxpayer dollars. Borrowing $30 million puts Manitowoc County taxpayers on the hook for the courthouse restoration project for at least 25 years, a quarter of a century. When I consider what future needs may arise for Manitowoc County, I think it's important that we keep our debt low so that we continue to use strategic borrowing to maintain our infrastructure and complete limited capital improvements. If we were to borrow $30 million, it would more than double the county's debt in a time of economic uncertainty. I believe that puts us in a weaker position to tackle future needs and challenges. Borrowing $30 million also has a cost. Interest rates have risen considerably over the past year or so. And as a result, the cost of the $30 million project is even more expensive now than it would have been pre-pandemic. If we were to borrow money at 4%, we would pay almost $15 million in interest. If we borrow this money, the true cost of the restoration isn't $30 million, it's $45 million or more. Borrowing $30 million will increase taxes, not only today, but in the future. It's been said that borrowing this money will lead to a one-time property tax increase, but that's not accurate. To pay for this, we need to increase property taxes next year and keep them higher until we finish paying off this debt. That's not a one-time increase. That's a tax increase in perpetuity. We have heard that the sales tax will never go away because we cannot control what future county boards or future county executives will do. But does anyone in this room believe that over 2 decades from now, the people who fill these seats will lower taxes once the courthouse debt is paid off? The problem with debt spending is that it makes payment for the debt someone else's problem. Debt spending should be viewed exactly as what it is, a tax today and a tax on future generations. I believe we all agree that the Manitowoc County Courthouse is worth preserving, and that the 4 projects contained in the resolution are a matter of when, not if. However, we have to get the funding right. I urge you to reject the resolution as proposed. It has been stated that this is a once-in-a-century project. If that's so, we owe it to the future of Manitowoc County to create a once-in-a-century solution. And that'll be my comments, and I'm going to step back for the rest of the conversation. Supervisor Benke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I would like to propose an amendment to the resolution as presented, starting with line 39, mid-sentence, striking the word repair and restoration of the courthouse tower and exterior dome, repair and restoration of the atrium interior dome. Then also looking at line 41, replacing 30 with the number 4. That is my motion, Mr. Chair.
There is a motion and is there a second? Supervisor Bauman, are you seconding? Okay, thank you. Would you like to speak on your motion, Supervisor Benke?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I think we've gotten a taste of the general public's sentiment on this project. There's a lot of different ways to look at this project. I mean, you can look at it all different ways. We've talked about sales tax, we've talked about property tax, we've talked about what's regressive. And I look at it from the standpoint of we have an aging county. Demographically, we are an aging county. Our census numbers tell us that. I look at the fixed income person within Manitowoc County. I look at the school referendum, that's going to be a hit to the property tax. Now we're looking to stick another $30 million onto the property tax on top of that. That fixed person's living on Social Security. With inflation, their Social Security never kept up to that. So I have concern about that in this whole project. I think these two, this is 30% of the project, the HVAC system and the windows. I say we get these two projects done, then we take a look from there moving forward. And that concludes my comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Benke. Any other discussion on the motion to amend? And if I can just clarify your motion, it would be to remove the interior atrium dome and the exterior dome and tower, and to reduce the total amount that we would be looking to borrow to $4 million. Thank you. Any other discussion on that motion? Supervisor Phipps.
I'm also very concerned with our rising operational costs. I'm concerned for the employees of Manitowoc County. 1% raise is about $300,000. We did just have some cost sharing from the state of approximately $2 million, and that's already spoken for and used up with operational costs. I'm also concerned from a perspective of our constituents. We have many constituents living paycheck to paycheck, and I think with inflation, utility costs, rising grocery bills, I just don't think now is the time to be adding to the burden that's already a hardship for them. So, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Phipps. Any other discussion on the motion to amend? Supervisor Droll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of my concerns about going about changing this resolution in this manner is we've just spent almost a year dealing with all of these issues, and the resolution to proceed would be to do the engineering work to determine what parts of this project are going to go ahead or not go ahead, and to give us some kind of an idea of the procedure that the ad hoc committee and ultimately Public Works and Finance and Public Works brought us to this point. At any time after we would proceed, we have the opportunity to do or not do any of these projects. But I feel until we determine the engineering costs and the costs of these projects, going through the bidding process, looking at the bases and the alternates, eventually deciding how this is going to be paid for, we need that information to know what we have to do to save this building and go ahead. And I don't think that kicking the can down the road by picking two of these items is the way to go. And that dome has a certain amount of structural integrity to the rest of the building as well. And I don't know what the future of the economy is going to be. I think that things could get more expensive. So what happens down the road if that happens? We're confident, we're thinking it's not going to cost more than $30 million if we do the whole project. But it's very likely if we only do parts of this or whatever parts we choose to do, it would not be that amount of money. So I would like to see this resolution continue. I would like to see the process that we have undertaken to this point continue, and then as that process plays out, we have the information to determine what we're going to do. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Droll. Supervisor Zimmer.
Mr. Chairman, I'm wondering if you can ask Supervisor Giroux to, don't repeat the whole thing, but I'm a little confused at, in other words, I presume Supervisor Giroux will oppose the amendment suggested by Supervisor Benke.
I think that sounds correct. I don't want to speak for you, Supervisor Droll, but
The resolution continue as it's proposed and then follow the procedure that we've set down over the course of the meetings of the ad hoc committee and Public Works and Finance, and do the engineering, put it out for bid, find out what the prices are gonna be, find out where our money is coming from, and decide if we're gonna do it all or do it parts of it, and over what period of time.
Thank you, Supervisor Giroux. Supervisor Zimmer, you still have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, there is never going to be a right time to do this. Never. All right? We need this to occur. We need to accomplish this task. And it is a burden to some people, but it has to be done. I support the completion of the entire project, and I would support having to raise property taxes. It's going to affect me. I mean, I'm driving a 2013 Ford Fusion, and if I live that long, I'll be driving that Ford Fusion 10 years from now. I am not a wealthy man and never will be. But I realize that certain things have to be accomplished. And unfortunately, these things cost money. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Zimmer. Supervisor Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Supervisor Zimmer. I don't know if we've ever agreed on anything on the floor, but we do tonight. Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Giroux. He made an important point here. This is the start of a process. At any time, this board has the ability to vote not to borrow money in the future. But right now, we really don't have a clear idea how strong that dome still is. The gentleman who came in and did evaluations, and they went through, and they're looking at some things that we won't know until the engineering comes. So my question is, so how long do we wait? Do we get lucky and it lasts another 10 years? Does something happen and it starts decaying sooner? At least we need to find out the engineering on what our costs are going to be. And then at that time, if you don't want to do it, you have that vote. You still have the vote to stop those things from happening. I have said this before, the financing of this project is very hard for me. Most of you know I was an advocate for a sales tax. My concern, after talking with Corp Counsel, is I want to make sure if I vote for a sales tax for this, that it ends when the project ends. Because that's what I am telling the people, my constituents. And I can't guarantee that because who knows how long this guy will be serving on this board. So financing to me is a little different. That's going to be a decision we have to make. But we have to find out what is needed in the building. We have to know how serious some of those problems are. It's 100+ years old. My house is 100+ years old. You do maintenance, you do maintenance, you do maintenance, but sometimes you have to fix some things because it's an old building. I will support this as written, but again, you have that choice in the future when borrowing comes up if you want to do a project or not. And at that time, I believe it'll take 2/3 of a vote to approve borrowing for the project.
Three quarters actually under statute.
3/4. So you have that. But at this time, let's find out what we need. Let's find out how serious it is. Maybe we'll find out we don't have to do some of the work. But let's find out. Thank you.
Thank you Supervisor Hanson. Next up, I have Supervisor Falkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. During these meetings, there was a consensus that this project needed to be done. I mean, there was some variations that maybe you could do this thing, or even some dereliction of a direction that maybe if you did incrementally these things, that would be better, or a greater or a better effect on this. Usually when those things happen, there's usually a cascade effect that it's hard to predict. Case in point, I guess, being in the northern part of the county, this Kewaunee County is attempting to build a jail. They delayed and procrastinated quite a long time, and it ended up, I think, close to 20% more of the cost of doing that project. That's the problem when you're doing incremental attachments to some of these projects. There are known problems to be dealt with. That's one of the things to reiterate with what both of the supervisors, Hanson and Jarrell, are talking about, is that at these committees, the notion was to fund the engineering so we can at least get the specs to the people to give us some estimates to find out exactly how much of a bite this is going to be. I think that's an appropriate way to pursue this, because without it, the incremental, the unknown of saying we're going to do these incremental projects is also problematic, because it's going to run into other cascade effects, things that will actually cost in the long run, which everybody is concerned about the future. I mean, if you're kicking out 10, 15 years, it would be ironic if 10 and 15 years later people would say, you know, those dumb board people, they didn't act. If they would have acted, it would have been done. It would have been clean, just like a person investing in their mortgage and saying, yeah, I'm going to make my payments, but at the end, I'm done. And I think that's the process it's hard to get a tangible number on, because everybody's invoking a whole lot of emotion or anecdotal, like how I'm going to put this into a perspective that I can relate to. Governing is a real tough business. If there was an answer to anybody, any local government or even state government, if they had an answer to this, they would have it. There is no solution to this. You really have a circumstance that you have to act. It'll burden the taxpayers, or it'll have some impact on taxpayers, period. There's no avoiding it. But the reality is we have to act on it. And how we want to act on it, I think I agree with the condition of the original resolution to go forward. We'll be able to fund the engineering to get the spec on exactly what we have to get done. We really don't know that until I think the details are done. So I don't have any problems with the way this is proceeding that way, but I don't think incrementally would be the answer to it. So that's it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor Falkowski. Supervisor Klein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, what is the will of the people? So I'm assuming all the supervisors have talked to your constituencies and you have some kind of response, very similar to the response that we heard here tonight. Many people are at wit's end, and it's getting to the point where the government continues to move, be it local, state, federal. They're moving more and more into our disposable income. I happen to be a taxpayer, and my disposable income is getting less and less. There are people who are less fortunate than I that are right at the edge. So I ask you, what is the will of the people in your constituency? If you don't know, you need to ask around, because I'm getting around a 90 to 95% from my constituency that are not supportive of the amount it costs. They're somewhat supportive of, yeah, it would be nice, but pretty much it's a money thing. As this resolution is sitting here, it does imply borrowing. So if we pass this, it's kind of saying, hey, listen, borrowing is the way we're going to fund this. And it's not just the 30 million, although that is technically correct. It's more around that 45 million with interest over that time. So it's a lot of money. I did not see structural imperative inside of this survey, this study. So it's not a structural issue, it's a restoration, if you will, but it is limited in terms of its. So, with that, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. I just want to remind supervisors, right now we're discussing a motion to amend the original resolution. Supervisor Phipps, I have you up next.
Thank you, Chairman Martell. Just a little perspective or point of interest is that the engineering is completely different if we do the dome or if we do just the windows or just the heating system. So if we stay in the heating system realm or the window realm, there's many local contractors that can do the engineering on them. So like this is kind of an important separation because if we continue on this path, we're kind of going with some of the most expensive engineering in the state. And another point that I wanted to make is that I hear a lot about in the future we'll have rising costs for the county. I just would respectfully remind everybody that that means that we have rising costs for the individual also. So that's really not completely truthful, because if we have rising costs for the county, that means the individual has all those same costs and more. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Phipps. Supervisor Nadel.
Thank you, Chairman Martell. I guess, I don't know if I missed something along the line, but we got this big pamphlet here when we started this whole project, and pretty much all the costs are laid out. So this thing of saying we need to find out what it's gonna cost, we know it's gonna cost a lot of money. So I guess I don't know what I'm supposed to do when I talk to my constituents, and nobody wants their taxes to go up. Once your taxes go up, they never go down. I mean, we're paying the 4th highest property taxes in the country right now. So, I don't know, we have to find a different alternative. We have to slow this down, and we have to do it in phases. I mean, I just can't justify, I'm not going to vote for this. My constituents do not want it, and that's what I'm here for, is to vote the way my constituents want me to vote. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Bry.
Call the question, Mr. Chairman.
All right, there's a motion to call the question. Is there a second?
No, it's just an objection.
It's a motion to call the question.
Wow.
There's a second by Supervisor Falkowski. Supervisor Benke. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, so there's no discussion on calling the question, right?
Right.
So there's no discussion on calling the question. So we have a motion to call the question. There's been a second. Supervisors will vote on calling the question, which will end debate on the amendment that Supervisor Benke proposed. It requires a 2/3 majority to end debate on this amendment. Verbal. Just one moment. We're just wondering how to conduct the vote. I'm sorry. A roll call vote. Okay. Supervisor Zimmer, there's no discussion on after a motion has been made to call the questions. We have to vote on this before we can continue discussing. I can explain that. So the motion is to call the question, which is a motion to Supervisor Bry, I can explain. Call the question is a motion to end debate. Now this is to end debate on the discussion that we're having about the amendment to the resolution. It requires a 2/3 majority to pass. So if you want discussion on this amendment to the resolution to end, you should vote yes. If you would like it to continue or would like to allow it to continue, you should vote no. Does that make sense? Okay. So the motion is to call the question. The clerk will conduct the vote.
All right, supervisors will motion to call the question.
The motion fails to receive 2/3 of the membership, so the discussion continues on the motion to amend the resolution. Any further discussion on that? Supervisor Zimmer.
I would like to hear exactly what Supervisor Benke's motion is once again, and that way all of us will be crystal clear on what exactly he is proposing. So can we have that presented very carefully and clearly, please?
Explain, Supervisor Benke.
So, Ms. Supervisor Zimmer, if you look at line 39. 39, sir, 39. So mid-sentence, where it says repair and restoration of the courthouse tower and exterior dome, repair and restoration of the atrium interior dome would be stricken from the original resolution. And then also, we would change the word in line 41 of 30 to 4. So strike 30, and it would say 4.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Yes?
So instead of $30 million, you're changing it to $4 million?
The dome, the tower, and the interior dome. The 4 is based on the estimate of cost for the windows and the HVAC system. That's where the 4 comes in.
Any other discussion on the amendment to the resolution? Supervisor Benke.
So I'll try not to belabor the situation. Supervisor Hanson's comment about we gotta investigate, we could be sticking $3 million into engineering to find out where we're at, and then we decide whether we wanna finance it or not. We already have $3 million stuck into it. Now there's no turning back. You know it as well as I know it. People in my district do not want this. Most people I talk to, the other morning I talked to a bunch of gentlemen at McDonald's, the normal morning cronies that eat breakfast every morning, and my wife said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm gonna go over and talk to these guys." Not a one. Explained it. Explained the proposal here. Yep, we're good with that. HVAC, windows, sounds good. So I've asked a lot of people in my district. I found one individual that supports $30 million possibility on the courthouse. One individual. And I guarantee you I've asked at least 100 people. At least. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Benke. Supervisor Zimmer, this will be your last opportunity to speak on the amendment.
All right. I strongly suggest that we leave the resolution exactly as it was. This issue was discussed, and this resolution was composed at the last ad hoc committee meeting, and there was a reasonable consensus that resulted in the creation of this resolution. And one more thing. I live in the 10th Supervisory District within and represent the 10th County Supervisory District. I haven't had one single phone call or knock on my door about this issue. Not one. I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. I had one person who talked to me personally. So it doesn't seem to me that there's a hue and cry to cancel this remodeling, at least not in my county supervisory district. I encourage my fellow county board members to leave the resolution as it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Zimmer. Supervisor Falkowski, this will also be your last opportunity.
I better make it good. I found that if I ask individuals certain things, it probably uncovers a lot of their bias. So for instance, if their expectations to answer the way they probably perceive they'd like to hear from me, they would answer in that regard. I found it in, especially with the local governments actually trying to engage with leaders in their local governments, choosing the decision to act on this required a little bit more than just the opinions of people that you couldn't gauge how they were biasing their thoughts. Quite honestly, I'm in the camp that I don't want to pay more taxes. I mean, honestly, I don't know who isn't. But the truth is that that's what the committee was supposed to do, the hard work. They were supposed to go through, verify the tasks that need to be addressed and to quantify, I guess, the best path to go forward. They had the selection of a variety of personnel that could address that. Not everybody agreed, which is perfect, because that, I believe, came to the same conclusion, probably why we have this resolution. The going forward to take on the whole project is not necessarily, like eating the dinosaur. You're gonna have to do this at one bite at a time. And quite honestly, when some of these that information comes out, it will have to be determined by vote how we're going to approve the funding for it. So we do have a mechanism to kick back at doing any of these projects if we find out to do that. But I truly don't understand, well, I do, that I would feel much better, and I think the constituents would deserve better to know quantitatively what we're up against, and the only way I can really perceive that is doing the engineering stuff going forward, which leads me back to supporting the original resolution and not necessarily carving out little nuances of the project, because all that seems to be is going to cascade the effects that we're gonna have to explain this decades later, and people aren't gonna be very friendly, and we're gonna be chastised for our lack of decision-making. And you can apply the skill sets for making a decision. You can rank this stuff, you can weight it, you can do a lot of mathematics to come up to this conclusion, but the conclusion really says that this needs to go forward. So I support the original resolution and not the amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Falkowski. I have Supervisor Marsh next.
Thank you. I think most of you know I like to talk a lot. So, you know, I get out there, and it is sad. People did not talk, they didn't come to me to talk about it. I went to them. I wanted to know, do you know what's going on? And I explained it. I explained it not slanted in what way I thought it should be. I wanted them to have a part in this. A lot of conversations, and I should say all except for right before I left, I got an email from somebody, and that was the only one that was said go with the original resolution. But they're concerned. They would like things done slowly, and that's why the amendment, I will vote on that to approve that. I think we need to go slowly. I don't like the thought of locking ourselves in and getting the engineering, getting all that money stuck in, and then, yes, there we're stuck. That we've gone this far, we're 3 million in, might as well just go along. As my father would say, you're damned if you do or you're damned if you don't. And that's my end of my discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Marsh. Supervisor Sikowitz.
Thank you. Having been part of the ad hoc committee I also am on the Department of Public Works Committee. Sitting through all of those meetings, talking different directions on this, the main thing that came out of all of that is this project definitely needs to be done. There's no question in that. The biggest question was the funding part of it. I was not necessarily in favor of the long-term borrowing. I kind of was leaning towards the sales tax. After hearing all the different discussions, and JJ came and gave us a few ideas as how the long-term borrowing would not only affect the house owners, it also affects the business. If we do a sales tax, those businesses in the counties do not necessarily add any to that. But if we go through the borrowing process, those businesses are also helping pay for this project along with the homeowners because they pay taxes, just like a homeowner does. So with that being said, I am definitely in favor of doing the project with the original resolution, the way it was stated. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Sikowitz. Supervisor Klein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, being a rookie on this board, I'm probably the closest to some of you of being a civilian, and I can assure you that as a civilian, before coming to this board, I didn't know anything about Manitowoc County other than I lived in it and went to the county fair and did a couple of things. So since being on the board, I've learned a lot about Manitowoc County. But I would submit that the normal citizen who is working, raising families, taking vacations, doing what they do, they are not in tune to what's happening not only in the county, but in the cities they live in. They have busy lives. And so it's not surprising that Supervisor Zimmer was talking about not receiving calls. They're just not in tune. They're not, they would be interested if they knew what was going on, but they don't know what's going on unless you go out and talk to them. And when you talk to them, they will give you the feedback and it'll say basically no new taxes. You know, we got a bundle of taxes already. How are we managing it? And how can we provide the best answer for them? The other comment I want to make is a corporate tax, yes, it helps pay, but guess where the corporate tax goes? Into your products. You're paying the corporate tax. It's a hidden tax. And so when you go out and you buy your car and you pay $70,000 for a car that used to cost $20,000, guess where the corporate tax is going? It's taking it out of your pocket. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Supervisor Klein. Supervisor Phipps, I do see that you've requested to speak. However, out of respect for the rules, you have spoken twice on the amendment. So if after we vote on the amendment, you want to speak on the original resolution, you are welcome to do that. Any other discussion on the amendment to the resolution? Okay, seeing none, I just want to clarify again, for anybody who might be confused, this is just to amend the resolution to strike out the interior atrium dome, the exterior tower and dome, and to reduce the total amount that we would be borrowing to $4 million instead of $30 million. So does everybody understand what we're voting on? A yes would be to strike those items and reduce the dollar amount. A no would be to keep the original resolution. All right, I'm seeing no other discussion, so the clerk will conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the motion to amend Resolution 2023-2024-20 in line 39, strike, repair and restoration of courthouse tower and exterior dome, repair and restoration of the atrium interior dome. In line 41, change the word 30 to 4.
Okay, that motion fails, 10 voting yes, 15 voting no. So now we are back to the original resolution, which is as proposed. Supervisor Bauman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make an amendment to the resolution, striking lines 34 through 36, making a motion to remove the borrowing from the resolution. We need to borrow $3 million for the architecture and engineering. Add that to 30 million and 15 million in interest, and you have $48 million price tag. Oh, sorry.
Is there, so the motion is to strike to be funded with long-term borrowing? Is that correct?
Correct.
34 through 36?
Correct.
Okay. And then, are you also looking to amend line 42 where it says to be funded through long-term borrowing and not to exceed?
Correct.
Okay. Just want to be clear. So is there a second on the motion to strike the language referring to long-term borrowing? Supervisor Metzger will second for discussion. Supervisor Bauman, if you'd like to speak to your motion.
Well, like I said, we need to borrow $3 million for the architecture and engineering. If you add that to the 30 million and 15 million in interest, you've got $48 million price tag. So I agree with all of you. Let's get the solid figures through the $3 million architectural engineering, and then the whole board discuss the whole project and discuss if we're going to borrow it through sales tax or through property taxes. Sales taxes will generate between $7 and $9 million a year. We figure about $2 million will be by outside residents, and the courthouse project would be paid off in a total of about 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Bauman. We're just looking for clarification on exactly what the motion is, just because we're trying to write it down up here. So if you could please clarify.
To remove lines 34 through 36 about borrowing from the resolution.
Are you looking to, sure.
Supervisor Bauman, that lines 34 through 36 entail more than just long-term borrowing. Is it your intent, just so we can clarify and make sure that the body has a precise knowledge of what your motion is it your intent to just remove the reference to long-term borrowing?
Correct.
Okay, I think then, to clarify, I think it would be to remove the words "with the project to be funded by long-term borrowing" in line 36 solely, and then to remove those similar words in line 42.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Bauman. So there's a motion and a second to remove reference to long-term borrowing in lines 36 and 42, which my understanding that would leave the resolution with no recommendation for financing, just moving forward with the project. So that is the motion that we will be discussing now. Supervisor Giroux, you are up first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a point of clarification. The $3 million for the engineering costs was a guesstimate to be included within the 30 million of the scope of the project, not over and above, because I figured 10% of the project would be engineering. So when you're saying the 30 plus 3 plus the 15 to 48, the 3 was included in the 30. Just point that out.
Thank you, Supervisor Giroux. Next up, Supervisor Bry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess in reference to Supervisor Droll, the $30 million is still remaining in there, correct? It's still in the resolution. So my learned colleague from Kiel, I certainly respect that, and we've had many discussions over the last year, I guess, because I'm being a member of the ad hoc committee, and both of us, and the finance committee as well. But regardless of what happens with this resolution, whether it says borrowing, financing through a sales tax, it's still gonna have to be approved by the entire county board through the budget process or the borrowing process. And, you know, I was always in favor, as you mentioned, about the sales tax. I mean, that was my biggest thing, and I was pushing for it. And maybe I still will when it's time to actually finalize the project. But regardless of what people think, even if we do go with the sales tax route, we're still gonna have to borrow money. There's gonna be unless we wanna wait 2-3 years to build up that sales tax fund, we're still gonna borrow money. It's just, in my opinion, estimated if the sales tax route go, you're gonna be paying it off quicker. But there's also cons, as JJ Goodman, our finance director, pointed out. It would probably be double the interest rate. Right now, we're estimating between 3 and 4. Otherwise, it would be between 7 and 8%. So, but you pay it off quicker. While I certainly understand your resolution and your motion, and technically, I guess I would support it, but I'm not gonna support it right now, because we're gonna have this discussion later on anyways. It kinda goes to what Supervisor Benke's amendment was too, just a little bit different, but I urge you not to support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Bry. Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Supervisor Metzger.
You know, I think there's a confusion with the long-term borrowing. Before the meeting, I talked, and one person says that it means it's gonna be forever. Now we're saying that we're gonna discuss that later, that we're just gonna approve the resolution. And so I think that needs to be clarified first, what exactly does this say? My personal opinion is I would like to see the 0.5 sales tax with when it is paid for, that get removed. But on the same token, I can't speak for everybody in this county. I do feel the courthouse is the people's, that's the people's house. I think that they should have the final say. I think that we can recommend borrowing the 30 million, but on a referendum, I think that it should be two choices, either the 0.5 sales tax and an end when the project is paid, which we would have to borrow the money until we get that far, or it would have to be on the house taxes, which the people I spoke with would prefer the other one, but a referendum would say what everybody would like. They'd have their choice.
Thank you, Supervisor Metzger. Did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I was just gonna point out is that on a referendum, it has to be one question. You can't have alternate questions on a referendum. So it's not like voting for a candidate where you can pick one versus picking another. It's a straight up yes, no with a plain, clear question.
The board could then, after this, if we support this, then we could have a meeting on which one we prefer, the 0.5 or the other one, and have that on the referendum. Maybe that would help, because then at least the public would have a say and not just us. You know, even though we do speak to our constituents, I mean, I know what mine want, but that doesn't mean everybody's wants the same. The other thing is, I did speak with Sheboygan County this last week when I had the Health and Human Services Committee meeting, and they have the 0.5, and the gentleman told me, he said they are very satisfied with, they said they get money from Road America, and he said you wouldn't believe how much money they get, that could, something like that could help pay if we have that here, but just for the limited time, not for permanent, is what I've been hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Metzger. Any other discussion on the motion to remove the reference to long-term borrowing from the resolution? Supervisor Zimmer.
I guess what bothers me about this is is that if we remove that $30 million, I infer from that we're going to choose the half-cent sales tax. I mean, the committee, the ad hoc committee, composed this this resolution. Jim, I believe, Supervisor Bauman is on the ad hoc committee. Okay, well, the ad hoc committee decided that the best way to finance this was through long-term borrowing. I do not think
Supervisor
that-
Zimmer, I just want to correct you. The ad hoc committee did not make a recommendation. We forwarded both options to the finance committee.
What did I say wrong? I'm sorry.
You stated that the ad hoc committee supported the long-term borrowing. We actually rejected a motion to support the long-term borrowing, and instead we passed along our recommendation to explore the sales tax option and the long-term borrowing to the finance committee. The finance committee met jointly with Public Works.
I see, yeah,
and
okay.
I just want to clarify that.
I stand corrected. Again, though, there's almost an inference that, well, long-term borrowing is off the table. We'll figure out how to implement this half-cent regressive sales tax. And I don't like that. I think we ought to keep the resolution exactly as it has been written.
Thank you, Supervisor Zimmer. Any other discussion on the amendment? Supervisor Metzger.
My question really didn't get answered. Reading this resolution, please explain to me, does this mean we're going to borrow that money and it's going to be on the taxpayers, or is that, if we vote this in, do we vote that later on? Is that what this is?
Yeah, so my understanding, and Peter, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it would be, there is no financing option on the resolution. So that would be decided at a later date, but if the resolution were to pass, we would continue moving forward with the project. Is that accurate? Okay, does that answer your question?
Yes,
Thank
because
you.
then we still have the option which way we want to fund it.
Right, it would indicate that the county board would like to see the project done, but without a financing recommendation.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on the amendment? Any other discussion? Seeing none, the clerk will conduct the vote.
Let's clarify.
Oh, I'm sorry, yep, okay.
I do want to always clarify what the motion is. So a no vote in this instance would be to keep the resolution as it is currently drafted. A yes vote would be to amend or to change the resolution and remove the idea that there is an intent to fund the project by long-term borrowing.
Does everybody understand what we'll be voting on?
A no vote keeps the resolution as it is, as presented. A yes vote is what changes the resolution. The change to the resolution that would be incorporated or adopted by a yes vote would be to remove the language with the project to be funded by long-term borrowing. That's what a yes vote does. A no vote keeps the resolution as it is.
Do all supervisors understand, and are we prepared to vote? Okay, the clerk will conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the motion to amend Resolution 2023-2024-20 in line 36 and line 42, striking with the project to be funded by long-term borrowing.
That motion fails 10 to 15. Now we are back on discussion on the original motion. Is there any other, Supervisor Bry?
Once again, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to call the question.
Okay, there's a motion to call the question. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Falkowski. Supervisor Phipps, there's not an opportunity to discuss on calling the motion. If you would like to continue debating, I suggest you vote no on calling the question. So the motion is to call the question, which will end debate. A yes vote indicates that you would like to stop debate and immediately vote on the resolution. A no vote means you would like to continue discussion on the resolution. And we're just getting it ready for a roll call vote. That was Supervisor Falkowski. All right, the clerk will conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the motion to call the question.
All right, that motion passes. The question has been called, which then we will vote on the resolution. So we are on the resolution as is. We cannot offer any other amendments because the question has been called. So just to clarify, a yes vote will approve the resolution that is in front of you and as it was proposed to us tonight. A no vote will reject the resolution. Does everybody understand what we are voting on? Perfect. Then, the clerk, are you ready? We'll take a moment. And this only requires a majority to pass? Okay. Okay, the clerk will conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the resolution expressing intent to proceed with courthouse dome project.
The resolution is adopted, 16 voting yes, 9 voting no. Let's see, what are we on next? I believe that will bring us to our next item by Supervisor Phipps. Where's my agenda? Where's my agenda? Oh, here it is. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so we are on our second miscellaneous item, Supervisor Phipps.
Thank you, Chairman Martell. As a regular scheduled meeting, the town of, Resolution 2023-2024-21, approving Town of Newton zoning ordinance for Ronald and Luann Walk. Normal scheduled meeting, the Town of Newton, on Wednesday, June 14th, a request by Ronald and Luann Walk to rezone 25.88 acre parcel from A2 to General Ag District to A3 Farmland Preservation District. The parcel is located on the northwest corner of Carsons Lake Road, Highway 42, southeast quarter mile and southwest quarter mile, section 17 T18R-23E. I make a motion to approve their request along with the town of Newton.
All right, thank you, Supervisor Phipps. There's a motion, second by Supervisor Mink. Any discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, the clerk will conduct the vote.
Supervisors will now vote on the resolution approving Town of Newton zoning ordinance for Ronald and Luann Walk.
And the motion carries unanimously. That concludes our business. Our next meeting, what's the date of our next meeting? August 16th, I believe. 15th? August 15th? Okay, so our next meeting is on August 15th at 6 o'clock. With that, I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn. Motion by Supervisor Giroux, second by Supervisor Hanson. We are adjourned.